Hi, how's everyone? Today I'm going to talk about Samaritan's Purse. Yeah, it's an interesting ministry that's been out there for quite a while, mostly known probably for Operation Christmas Child, but hopefully today we'll learn about some of the other things it does and how well it does them. So here we go. So Samaritan's Purse was founded in 1970 by Bob Pierce. He was a journalist and evangelist who was doing a lot of traveling after World War II and seeing a very broken world with a lot of poverty and sadness, and seeing some people working in that area who were working with orphans, sacrificing, and that gave him a heart for missions. In 1973, he met Franklin Graham, who was going to be his mentee, as it were, and they toured together starting in 1975. And from that tour, Franklin Graham got a passion and caught the bug, as it were, with Bob Pierce, and they continued to work together until 1978 when Bob Pierce died from leukemia. 1 year later, Franklin Graham became president and chairman of the board of Samaritan's Purse. Samaritan's Purse is a non-denominational evangelical Christian organization. I won't read the whole mission statement as it's right there and you can see it, but they exist primarily to serve people through sharing the love of Jesus Christ and through evangelizing and promoting the gospel to the people they serve. They have a number of programs. Like I said, I think they're most famous for Operation Christmas Child, which is probably also their most highly critiqued program, if I can put it like that. The other thing that they do the most of is crisis response, both on the U.S. disaster relief side and the international crisis response side. I'm going to take you through each one of these programs and share just a little bit of information about each one, and then circle back around and look at how each of these address or speak to their view of poverty and of their development theories. So that's the approach we're going to take, and then at the end we'll take a look at some of their financial accountability stuff, careers, and yeah, what the world thinks about them. So here we go. So International Crisis Response is the first of the ministries we'll look at, and this is a highly trained, specialized team. They call it the DART, Disaster Assistance Response Teams. People can apply to be on this team. They ask that people who do this bring some skills, either medical, construction, ability to work under pressure, all of those kinds of things, so that, and an availability, to be able to spring into action at a moment's notice and be deployed for 2 to 4 weeks at a time. This team specializes in meeting critical needs for victims of conflict, disaster, famine, and epidemics, and provides basic necessities, food, water, shelter, and assistance, all in the name of Jesus. As I mentioned earlier, Operation Christmas Child, probably their most notorious mission, is the idea of the shoe boxes. They collect literally millions of them every year. In 2017, I believe they collected over 10 million shoe boxes that are distributed then in over 100 countries. And through these shoe boxes, they distribute a discipleship pamphlet or program called The Greatest Journey. And this is their the starting of that process, if you will, is through a child receiving a shoebox. So by them receiving a shoebox, they also receive the Greatest Journey Discipleship Program opportunity. This is a 12-lesson discipleship program, and it is included with every Operation Christmas Child shoebox. It is a program that's developed with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and yeah, it's designed to teach children to know Jesus, grow in their faith, and learn to share that good news with others. In order to facilitate this program, they work with local churches all around the world in the 100+ countries that they serve, so that there are people on the ground prepared and able to walk children through these discipleship processes. In addition to serving around the world in the times of crises, They have a North American ministry team that is prepared to respond to disasters that happen right here in the United States. And most of this work is centered around compassion kind of work, helping being with homeowners to help them recover. It's largely construction projects wherever the disaster has struck, and they also do some work exclusively in the remote Alaska parts of that state. The World Medical Mission is their, they call it the medical arm of SamaritansPurse. They work in conjunction with existing mission hospitals in two basic capacities. They place volunteer Christian medical personnel there to serve, and they also staff or provide biomedical equipment that those hospitals might not have. That's the way they work out in the world. Through the World Medical Mission, they also provide some services to help children through facilities in the United States. We'll cover those in just a minute. The World Medical Mission includes a post-residency program, which we'll talk a little bit more about. They deal with urgent needs as well as ongoing needs. They publish a magazine called the On Call magazine that includes stories about what they're doing and where they're serving. And then they serve at the mission hospitals in a variety of countries with whom they're partnered. The Greta Home and Academy is a housing and school unit in Haiti that was started by or largely encouraged by Greta Van Susteren, who is a notorious, perhaps a famous attorney and journalist here in the US, who was deeply touched by the earthquake and tragedy that struck there in 2010. This home was built on that site where a previous orphanage had stood. So this home and academy provides housing for 60 orphans and education for an additional 150 who live in the nearby community. The Children's Heart Project was founded in 1997 and has served over 1,000 children since then. It does arrange for life-saving operations to be performed in the US for kids who need them. It provides transportation for the child, a parent, and a translator, and coordinates with local hospitals who will provide or donate the services of both the hospital, the surgeons, and the staff. The average length of stay for kids involved in this program is 5 weeks, and local churches have families who assist with homestay for the families, daily necessities, as well as prayer and evangelism for these families. Operation Heal Our Patriots is a program that serves U.S. Service members and their wives. It reaches out specifically to patriots who have been wounded in service and their spouses, and they have an opportunity to spend a week up in Alaska, kind of in a retreat setting, for spiritual refreshment, physical renewal, and marriage enrichment. This is a fairly new program, but it's making great strides and offering a kind of spiritual help for people right here in our own country that's really pretty awesome. Through the years, SamaritansPurse has recognized that the people they're serving are in disasters or who have been victims of civil wars or etc. are losing their opportunity for livelihood either through the disaster itself or through displacement. And so starting agriculture programs that include animals, farming, those kinds of things have come onto their radar as an important adjunct to their existing programs. So they've begun an animals, agriculture, and livelihood program that does include dairy animals, chicken, poultry, aquaculture, farm and garden, etc. And this is not only a way to have farmers be able to support themselves, but it does give them an opportunity also for income that can support their family, for education and other such things. The arena of children's ministries is growing. From the Greta Home and Academy, they're also including a Children in Crisis program. They have feeding projects, which we'll talk a little bit more about. They have a special project for children with disabilities, which is also often problematic in the developing world, as those kids are often not attached from the time they're children and often dismissed as insignificant or just problems as they grow up. Then, of course, the Heart Project, Operation Christmas Child, and The Greatest Journey are part of their children's ministries as well. SamaritansPurse's construction projects help communities in a variety of ways. It might be building a new church in a community that has believers but no place to worship, or it could be working with an existing school that's been damaged or destroyed through natural disaster or war, or it could be that school is just so far away that some kids can't get there. So they build new or upgrade schools, churches, and hospitals in communities in order to facilitate the long-term success of these kinds of projects for the communities in which they work. The crisis and disaster response is, like I said, one of their flagship ministries. So they continue to specialize in meeting critical needs in the world's most troubled regions. And they do a lot of this through utilizing ministry partnerships, often people who are already on the ground. They do have warehouses and storage areas on the ground in other countries for tent making supplies or erecting mobile hospitals and that kind of stuff. But they do partner with other agencies that are already in place to help utilize and set that stuff up as it's needed. SamaritansPurse is recognizing that the possession of vocational skills and literacy is extremely important for people to change their position in their community or to raise themselves up out of poverty. So with that, they have extended and developed new discipleship education and training programs that provide education and literacy, more evangelistic training, vocational projects, Bible study, and of course the Operation Heal Our Patriots and The Greatest Journey are part of their programming that fall under this umbrella. SamaritansPurse is working on feeding and nutrition programs. They perhaps had the inception into this program through feeding massive groups of people who were displaced through war, civil conflict, or disaster, but they're also expanding this feeding and nutrition ministry to include school feeding programs and addressing chronic lack of food in communities where that's become a problem. Through the medical arm of SamaritansPurse, the World Medical Mission, they provide a variety of medical ministries, including cleft lip repair, which is performed by volunteer medical teams that either travel there or help kids come here. They work with epidemic disease preventions, fighting malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, and other epidemic services through medical care and prevention training. They have prenatal and maternity care to help with infant mortality and whatnot. And of course, the medical equipment and supplies they provide, as well as teaching in communities to ensure community health and strategies around safety. Their water, sanitation, and hygiene programs are in providing clean water and teaching hygiene and practices that prevent disease. They also work with providing freshwater wells and boreholes. They have filtration systems that are both on the small household size and community filtration systems that are much larger. They're working with health and hygiene education, and in crisis situations, they provide water protection and water treatment packets for individual use. As with most other organizations, the awareness of the challenges that women face around exploitation, gender-based violence, abuse, abandonment is a real thing. And SamaritansPurse has women's programs that are dealing with those concerns, including vocational training and literacy, exploitation awareness, and gender-based violence prevention, as well as paying attention to maternal and child health. So that's a brief summary of the vast number of programs that are offered. And while I haven't touched on every facet of every program, those are the fundamental things that are being done through those programs, through Samaritan's Purse as an organization. As far as their poverty theory goes, I think what has been most notable to me as I've studied this organization is that they are in a transition, or that they are recognizing the need to transition from a basic poverty as deficit philosophy, which they got from the Good Samaritan, not a bad thing, but looking at, here's the guy who's hurt and I'm going to come help him. That is exemplified through their basic ministries, or their foundational ministries, if you will, of disaster relief. And Operation Christmas Child is even the same thing. Here are some poor kids, so we're going to give them something that feels tangible and helpful. The World Medical Mission is another example of this kind of theory of experiencing poverty. But as we look through their programs, we see that they have begun to evolve that through newer programs, such as their WASH programs, women's programs, children's ministries, and Operation Heal Our Patriots, where they're including more of the spiritual, the psychological, the social and community aspects that impoverished people of all type. I mean, with Heal Our Patriots, we're looking at American citizens who probably have jobs but are still suffering from the marred images, the marred identities, that come through being impacted by the relationship we have with our world. As Samaritan's Purse is developing along the path of recognition toward a more holistic approach, we can look back at their call to action, which was the story of the Good Samaritan, and which ended with Jesus's command to go and do likewise. And this is what they've done. They've gone, and in times of great need, crisis, civil strife, disaster, they have gone and helped. And that's been their mode of operation, if you will, for the last several decades. But more recently, they have begun to evaluate the more holistic community and bring on this idea of development as a kingdom response to powerlessness. And I think that this transition for them in their development practices is going to is what's fueling their success right now. Because overall, I do think that they are an extremely successful missionary or transformational development organization. And I think that the more time and energy that they spend on their newer programs, which are, in my opinion, more committed to holism and transformational development, that they're going to be ongoing. Their success going forward is going to be great. And the great thing about that is it doesn't violate or go against their formational idea that they should go and do likewise. They can continue in that structure with some of these great new things they're doing. So I wasn't super clear on how to explain that Samaritan's Purse is a Christian NGO. They are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus as described in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Their mission statement acknowledges that they are a non-denominational evangelical Christian organization, and identifies 3 specific biblical mandates: that they should provide physical and spiritual aid to hurting people, that their purpose is to share God's love through his son, Jesus Christ, and to promote the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. All of those things are included in their missional statement. Samaritan's Purse, I think, has a phenomenal marketing website. That isn't to say that they have a regular website and one that's specifically designed for marketing, but I think that their website is incredibly deep and rich. It is updated regularly. It covers all of their missions. It's well tied together. Their flagship banner is consistent. Their message is consistent. The images of what they're doing and where they're doing it are dynamic, and they do a great job with their website. The Operation Christmas Child Ministry, if you Google Samaritan's Purse, mostly the hits you get are Operation Christmas Child. So the marketing of that program, the number of churches that participate, the brand recognition, if you will, of that is vast. And similarly, when surfing or looking at information around international crisis response, Samaritan's Purse is regularly represented as a significant participant in that arena. The other thing that's pretty amazing, I think, about their website and their marketing is their updates are frequent and current. So there's maybe a volcano or something going on in Guatemala, or that they're recovering from down there now. And I didn't know about it through the news, but I did find it as a response that they are participating in when I was doing research last week. So that availability of information and their presence and accuracy and speed of posting, I think is really awesome for their marketing. When you look at financial stewardship, I think everyone, I mean, there are a variety of ways to reflect it or to represent it. Transparency seems to be the catchphrase of the day, and there are laws and whatnot in place to assure that that transparency is high, and they are certainly in compliance with those requirements. Their annual report is available on their website. The IRS Form 990 is available on their website, which is quite a lengthy form. And there are some statistics that are available through some of the charity analysis firms that let you know where they stand as far as how much it costs them to raise money. So for example, the cost to raise $100 for their organization in 2015 was $12, and their program cost, or the amount of the money that they raise that goes to overhead, was 21%. This little graph just shows where the income for Samaritan's Purse comes from. There's some federated campaigns, which the contribution is so insignificant you can't see it on this pie chart. But government grants make up for about 5%, and all other contributions are right around 95%. So they do a great job raising money. And the total amount of money raised in 2016 was in just over $618 million. So that's a substantial chunk of income coming into the organization. A lot of the money and that chunk of that comes from Operation Christmas Child. And while it sounds like all of that money is coming in as income, they count the value of the shoeboxes that are sent in as part of that income. So for example, if they get 1 million shoeboxes and each shoebox costs, they assess the value of the average shoebox at $20, then $20 million of their income, if you will, is represented by those shoeboxes, which are really they're just a conduit for it. That's not money that they have available or that is at their disposal. There's an example here that from 2017 that they did receive almost 11 million shoeboxes, and those 11 million shoeboxes, almost 2 million of them, the children who received them, made decisions for Jesus through the Greatest Journey Discipleship Program, which is about 17% of the programs that were out there. So maybe not an amazing return on investment, but in the spirit that every soul counts, it certainly is significant. The charity watchdog corporations on the whole seem to feel or rate Samaritan's Purse well. Charity Watch, an organization, gave them an A-. The Charity Navigator rates them with 4 out of 4 stars and very high marks in their overall rating, financial rating, and accountability and transparency. The Best Company LLC gave them 3.7 out of 5 stars. Most of the negative of that coming from what they perceive to be too high administrative expenses and some press reviews that they were not favorable about. The concerns that the press expressed in this review were about Franklin Graham's political persuasion around some LGBTQ concerns and also his annual salary. Most of the concerns around the politics of Franklin Graham passed through in about 2015. You don't find too many more recent articles about that right now. His salary continues to be what it is. Another aspect of their marketing and another way to look at that is their employment and internships programs. They have a tremendous number of staff, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,600 paid positions and thousands more volunteers. As of today, they have 94 job openings that span everything from office workers to pilots, everywhere from here in the US and their corporate offices on the East Coast or anywhere around the world. They have a great post-residency program for physicians who are Christians who want to begin their medical careers in missionary service. They do offer paid 2-year service opportunities to serve in mission hospitals for physicians and their families. Internships are offered for both here in the US and internationally, and they are paid with competitive stipends for both that include a stipend, some living expenses, and travel as well, which is pretty sweet. The disaster assistance response team that we've talked about a couple different times are employment positions in the sense that each time people are called up and able to serve, they serve as short-term contract workers, not technically employees, and help off with those urgent needs in whatever circumstance they find themselves. So I think that Samaritan's Purse is awesome. The primary concern that you see regularly expressed is through their ministry of Operation Christmas Child. With what we have learned through When Helping Hurts and other types of, and other the things that we've read, this is what people complain about, that no one needs a box full of plastic toys and underwear and straws or whatever people send that don't add value to the community. And I don't know, I agree and I don't agree. And the agree part of me says, yes, we don't need to send silly, useless things to people. The part of me that does agree says any bridge to relationship maybe is a good thing. So perhaps it's not the best manifestation of that, but perhaps it is something that can be used well to continue to build relationships, to open the doors to an ongoing, lifelong relationship walking with Jesus. So they do go and do likewise, and they may not be perfect, but I think they're doing good work. Their evolutionary practices that through which they're learning about the current best practices, offering more holistic services, I think is awesome. And they're sharing the love of Jesus and expanding God's kingdom. So I think they rock. Thanks for your time.